What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Ultimate Bunny, more specifically two setups that I use on Ultimate Bunny, which technically speaking accomplish the same thing but kind of like do it differently. But the bottom line is, first and foremost, just to know if this build or these builds are for you, and just to explain a little bit about how I approach builds in the First Descendant, and more specifically how I manage my Descendants. My idea is that I don't build a Descendant to be able to do all content equally. I know that this is a big thing at the moment right now, and I know that it's super popular to have a Descendant that can do dungeons and infiltrations and void intercept bosses and open world farming and all of that equally good. But I kind of just feel like that's something that isn't really possible. Yes, with the exception of a few Descendants, there are some that are able to do a lot of these activities relatively good, but clearly there are some Descendants which stand out much ahead of the pack. And Ultimate Bunny, or Bunny in general, is a really good example of that, because while she is fully capable of killing void bosses, and with this setup you can absolutely do it as well, as you can see in the footage in the background, it is not as fast and efficient as, for instance, a Lepic or a Glay or something like that. So TLDR, my philosophy is I build Descendants to specifically do the thing that I think they are the best at. And so therefore these two Ultimate Bunny setups we're looking at today specifically target her best strength, and that is the ability to clear huge amounts of enemies really fast and essentially to farm activities super quick. Now I primarily use this bunny setup, this Ultimate Bunny setup, to do all of my infiltrations. So whenever I need to go and do a mission quickly fast, you know, these 20-minute missions that you have to go in that usually culminate in a boss fight at the end, or if I'm trying to just farm open world content to level up weapons and that sort of thing, like super fast. And this does this exceptionally easy, and also does it like no mess, no fuss. It's not really difficult to play. It's super easy setup. Essentially what you're doing is you're just turning on your third ability, and this essentially just electrocutes everything to death on screen. Now, the reason why we're using Ultimate Bunny is Ultimate Bunny has a module that is only available to Ultimate Bunny that basically pushes this to, you know, the next level. But first and foremost, before we get stuck in all of that detail and everything, let's just talk weapons. When it comes to this particular setup, your weapon doesn't really matter. More than anything, it's a stat stick that is an enabler for your reactor to have you deal more damage. So in the case of this, whatever your reactor asks you to carry around, like in my case, it's a thunder cage that is mounted, that is the weapon that you should be using. Generally speaking, you're not gonna be doing a lot of shooting with this build. Your third ability is going to be dealing most of the damage, if not all of it, and you'll essentially be playing a game of like running around and just picking up all the loot and essentially just topping off your energy the whole time so that you can keep casting your third ability. That being said, obviously something like the Thunder Cage is a fantastic idea. It suits the Bunny playstyle, and therefore you can also say the same thing about Python. In the case of both of these, if you'll just want to be building them to their strength, so in the case of Thunder Cage, you'll be wanting to build it to its strength, which is crit, and in the case of Python, you'll be wanting to build it to its strength, which is weak point. I will quickly just flash the modules, but as said, I won't be actually going through each one of these individually, because I don't really think the weapon choice matters all that much, and you could technically use anything, in my opinion, as long as it's holding your reactor up. So this is of course my Thunder Cage, which, you know, kind of accentuates crit damage, and then I have a Python as well, which is all about weak point damage, which is something that the Python is really good at. So then, just quickly taking us through the abilities of Bunny, you essentially you have a Thrill Bomb ability, which is your #1 ability, which shoots out a little, you know, bit of lightning and electrocutes something. This is also coincidentally powered up by High Voltage, which is the mod that I was referring to that is unique to Ultimate Bunny, and you have to be using the Ultimate Bunny skin or Descendant to be able to use this. And then it also empowers our third skill, which is Lightning Emission, which is the bread and butter. It's literally the thing that makes this build what it is. Now, speed of light is of course equally important, because this is the thing that makes Bunny so efficient and fast, because you can literally cover A to B a lot faster than any other Descendant can. In fact, I would say probably the fastest out of all of the Descendants that we currently have in the game. And then last but not least, we have her final ability, which is maximum power, which we literally never touch with this setup that we have here. Now, as mentioned, Rabbit Foot is the passive that Bunny has, and this is essentially a secondary resource that Bunny needs to use to empower her abilities. And the more of this resource you have stored in on your Bunny, when you activate something like, for instance, lightning emission, the more damage you will do. So this is a secondary thing that you kind of like you have to keep in the back of your mind, so that you need to manage this, that it's far better for you to actually activate lightning emission with a full bar of energy than it is to essentially activate it off cooldown as you have just a little bit of energy or something like that. And that's if you want to deal maximum damage. Now, that being said, this will still one-tap pretty much everything on hard in a dungeon or in a farming activity or something like that, even if you activate it low. What you will start seeing is, if you've activated high or full, is you'll start seeing like 800, 900, 1.4 million hits like that, which of course is not needed for most of the enemies in the game, especially stuff that you're farming, because they'll just flat out die. But quickly running us through the modules, and I do want to mention the two different builds that I have here. So when this says boss time at the top here, this is what I would use if I'm forced into a situation of having to use this to kill a void boss, and this is what I was using on that footage earlier. But I also tend to sometimes use this for more difficult infiltrations. So those 20-minute missions, some of them are a little bit more difficult than others, some of them are a little bit more spicy. And so basically, if you want to choose between the two here, the point is this first one here, boss time, this deals a lot more damage, but is consequently a little bit slower. Okay, but you really hit like a Mack fucking truck. And then Infills, the second one here, is a little bit less potent and doesn't deal as much damage, but you absolutely move a lot faster, and that's through the change of one mod, which we'll talk about. But let's quickly just go through the mods. A lot of these will be super simple to understand why they're in the build, and so therefore I'm not going to be spending too much time on them. But high voltage, as I said, is the star of this. What this does is it changes primarily, I mean, it changes your first ability as well, but it changes your third ability, and it changes it in two very big ways. It changes it in the fact that it increases your radius by quite a bit. So by default, the radius of normal lightning emission is 7, and this changes it to 9, and then because it can scale 300%, it can actually grow much bigger as well. So you will just be able to hit stuff from a lot further with this, which is a good thing, because this is your meat and potatoes and your damage. And then the other thing that it does is it also decreases the amount of it also increases the damage, of course, not just the range, but it also decreases the amount of targets that can be hit at once. Now, how lightning emissions usually works is it's like this pulse that essentially hits anything within that circle around you, whereas high voltage lightning emissions actually shoots out from you like lightning bolts, and it shoots 3 at a time. So you can shoot 3 enemies at a time. So it is, technically speaking, slower at chewing through big groups of enemies than normal lightning emissions, but because it hits so fucking hard, that's where its speed comes from, because any chunky enemies which would take maybe 3, 4, 5 pulses of normal lightning emissions now it just gets nuked once, and you know, it's fucking done. So as I said, this is the bread and butter of the build. Is this build possible without high voltage? Yeah, it absolutely is. It doesn't kill as efficiently, it doesn't kill as fast, and it's not as good against bosses, but it is really good at farming. And I have a build for that on the channel already, which is like AoE Bunny, so you'll be able to find that quite easily. Go ahead and check that out. If you don't have Ultimate Bunny and if you don't have high voltage, that's a very good alternative. So increase HP, you can see here, I don't even have any points in it, anything like that. The basic issue here is that this kills stuff before it basically gets a chance to shoot at you or come around the corner or something. So in the footage that you've maybe been seeing in the background, you'll see that oftentimes you kill shit off screen. Your lightning emissions shoot stuff before it gets to you. So the only real time that you face any real danger is if you're stepping in fucking fire, or if a boss shoots you with like something that can one-tap you. However, I would say that if you are struggling with survivability with this build, it's just a case of you learning to play it and learning the character and learning the, you know, the fights and all that stuff. So you can stack 1 or 2 more defensive abilities in here instead of the damage. Your damage will suffer a little bit, so pick whichever one you want and take that out and maybe put in some more HP or put in some more defense or something. But as you get better at playing this, this will become a non-point for you. And as you can see in this case here, just by the equipment, the external components that I'm wearing and all of that, plus you know, a little bit of survivability in case of this 22% additional HP is more than enough for me, and I don't die. So skill insights, the first one here. This build, Bunny does not have the highest crit rate by default, but we are stacking a lot of this on here because we do want lightning emissions to crit. It does really good damage by itself, but it's really fucking sick when it starts critting. And one of the other sort of things about Rabbitfoot and its interaction with lightning emissions, and this is, if you've ever seen people play this class, you'll notice that they are always trying to sort of grapple around and move faster than normal. And that's because your damage is actually tied into the speed at which your character is moving. The faster you are moving, or let's rather say the more distance you're covering, the more shots go out from your lightning emissions. So while it's very cute to just jog around and you will deal damage, you will really start seeing some sick shit when you start zipping around the map. Like for instance, if you activate your speed of light and run around a boss like a whole bunch of times really fast, it'll fucking nuke them down. Or, like I said, for example, if you go across a large area with your grapple, which moves quite fast and obviously covers a big distance, you will also see those pulses go out fast, and that's obviously a lot of sexy damage. So skill insight here, a huge amount of critical hit rate, which is what we need. We want to be stacking this, and we want to be stacking actual crit hit damage, so you'll be seeing that as well. Electric specialist is a no-brainer. This gives us electric skill power. Now, how damage works in this game, and I mean that's beyond the scope of this video, but the point is you have some things which are additive and you have some things which are multiplicative, but the general point is that you want to be leaning into sort of equal parts of everything. So you don't want to just be leaning into multiplicative, for example, or just into additive. You want to be equally stacking it up, and this, for example, is one of the ways that you can do that. Obviously, this is an extremely short and abbreviated explanation of it. There's a lot more nuance to it, I would say. But again, like I said, that's beyond the scope of this video. And if that's something that interests you, and if you'd like to delve a little bit more into the maths and stuff, let me know in the comments down below, and I can definitely do a video about that where we can break down some of these things and see which buckets of damage are more important for you to chase at which points in time when you develop your character. But electric specialist is a separate bucket of, you know, additional damage for us in the case of electrical skill power. Then skill concentration is the partner to skill insight. Skill insight is the hit rate, and then skill concentration is the damage. Then once you crit, then you get that damage, and it's super sexy. Then we have front lines, which gives us both. So this gives us crit hit damage and it gives us hit rate, which is fantastic. Anything that we can get that gives us this, a little bit of both, is usually beneficial to our damage. Skill simplification here gives us skill power modifier. Big difference between skill power and skill power. Well, big difference. I mean, you know, let's not overcomplicate things, but there is a difference between skill power and skill power modifier. So it's also, once again, beneficial. There's thresholds where it makes sense for you to move over from one to the other and to make sure that they both topped off to sort of like a certain point. Skill simplification is really good in a character like Bunny because while it does give you a max MP penalty, you don't really use anything except one skill the entire time, and it's relatively easy to make sure that you always have enough MP for that skill because you get pickups and stuff around the map and everything like that, and because it has such a long time that it's basically running, so you have more than enough time to replenish, that it absolutely is worth it to take skill simplification because it gives you such a big skill power modifier boost in, you know, this case 84.5%. Amplification control is something that, again, if the range of your lightning emissions is something that you want to juice up to the gills, this is a really good one. The max shield plus is like, ugh, you know, who really gives a shit about that? But this does give you another 51.7 range increase, which is huge. And as you can see, lightning emissions here starts at a radius of 9 meters, but this, not just this skill, but this gets us to a 22 meter lightning emission. And that's, I mean, the maximum would be 9 times 3, so you're looking at 27, so like 5 meters off the fucking the maximum range. But 22 is huge. 22 can cover most of the boss arenas that you fight in, and oftentimes you will, as I mentioned, will be running down a corridor and you'll be fucking nuking stuff that's around the corner in another room. You'll already be killing that shit, so by the time you show up in that room, there's just a bunch of loot lying on the floor. Emergency measures is in the same way how frontlines is really good for us. It's the same thing again. So a huge amount of critical skill hit rate. That's a fucking tongue twister of note. And also some hit damage. Once again, just once you stack these two together, this is the point where you start seeing like huge numbers and where your damage starts climbing quite nicely. Skill expansion is, as I mentioned, this is alongside amplification controllers where this massive size is coming from. If that's something that's not that important to you, if you're happy with like a 15-meter radius or something like that, which is still not shit, then you can of course lose one of these two and put something else in. But in the end, you'll see that once you start stacking all of these in terms of like juicing out more damage, that there's not necessarily like super better other choices for you to put in here. And then last but not least, dangerous ambush is the secret sauce in a lot of builds, and it's really good here as well. Basically what this does is it deals enemies that aren't targeting you, this deals more damage to them, basically you get a skill power increase, which is more damage to them. And then when something is immobilized, then it's even more, right? It's more skill attack as well. So sorry, on a skill attack against an immobilized enemy, you get more skill power. So it's basically double. So if just by default, if something's not targeting you, then you're dealing X amount more, and if it's immobilized, then you're dealing twice that amount pretty much. This helps a lot in situations where you're running in duos or in groups and stuff, because as soon as enemies are not targeting you, you will be dealing obviously a huge amount of more damage to them. But this also helps in cases where you fight like a void boss or something, because when you shoot stuff off a void boss and immobilize them and they go into like a fucking stun state or something like that, you're going to be dealing more damage to them, which is super cool. As mentioned, we can just quickly run through the second setup, and this is, as I said, the one that's more for like, this is faster but it doesn't hit quite as hard, and there's a lot of the same stuff in here. So the only two ones which I will really call out which are different is in case of me, instead of me using increased HP here, I'm using Battle of Stamina. They kind of almost give the same amount of max HP. Battle of Stamina gives a little bit more, but it gives you 8.8% more of skill duration, which makes your lighting emissions last a little bit longer, so you don't have to recast it, which is also okay. As it stands right now, the cooldown of this is 22 seconds, and then its duration is 22.9, which means you blanket it, and then as soon as it's done, you can recast it, and it will be ready to go. Now, the other big difference here, as you can see here, we're using Dangerous Ambush. The difference here is we're using MP Collector. And this is where the speed of this comes in, because more MP, right, means that you can use this more. You can use Speed of Light more, okay? And that just means that you'll be able to do activities more. So what MP Collector does is that when you kill an enemy, you stand a chance of recovering some MP, at a 17% chance. And this can, because you're especially in farming activities, if you're doing like those wave-based activities and stuff, this can just keep you topped off like the entire fucking time, which means you're running around the entire time. And because you're running around the entire time, you're pulsing lightning emissions out faster and they're hitting fucking harder. So it's just like, it's phenomenal. It's really good. And these two, I mean, like I said, sometimes there's not that big a difference between the two of them, but it's noticeable in like certain activities where you have a lot of like smallish enemies running at you and you just want to be juiced up and like run around all the time, like a fucking crazy person. So then when we talk, then just to round us off, we can quickly talk about the reactor. Of course, Tingling Singularity Reactor is our best bet because this has electric skill power boost and singular skill power boost. The skill that we primarily use for damage is an electric skill, and it's a singular skill, and that is lightning emission. So it makes complete sense that that is what we want on our reactor. But again, like I said, it really does matter though that you should be trying to get a reactor that you can match it with a mountable weapon. So it doesn't help if you have a yellow reactor, you have a Tingling Singularity Reactor, but the weapon that you need to be mounting on it, you either don't have yet because you haven't been able to craft it, or it's like a weapon that you never use in your fucking slot. Because you use a huge amount of, you lose like a massive amount of damage. The difference being between 100% and 160, so that's 60%, right? In terms of your sub stats, of course, this is like a fucking vanilla terrible rolled one, because this just has electrical skill power boost, which once again we're using, and then singular. There's a lot of better options here. I just haven't bothered to farm it out yet because I haven't felt the need to do so. But additional skill crit, additional skill damage, those are phenomenal fucking choices for you here as well, if you can get something with that on. But just to look at our base stats here quickly before we look at the external components, you can see that my skill critical hit rate is 30%, and then when they do crit, it's a 4 times, right? So this is really good. I mean, 30% is not as good as you can see on some of the other Descendants, which you can get up to 55-60% crit chance, but this is decent. And because you are shooting out so many of these, dude, this crits a fair amount of time, and I mean, when it does, it's fucking boss. But like I said, if you could get this with like crit hit and crit damage on and get that up to like 35, you know, something like that, that's even fucking better. So that's good stuff. But again, like I said, most important thing is make sure that you are able to match the weapon that's mounted with this, because that's going to mean a huge amount of damage for you. Of course, just in case you didn't know, it's really easy to figure out where you want to farm this. So let's say, for example, you're looking at this video right now and you're like, fuck, bro, like I have all this shit, I just don't have a tingling singularity reactor, what the fuck. Then this is super easy to target farm in the game, and it's not available every week because the farming areas in the game and what they can drop change weekly, they cycle weekly. But there's an easy way for you to check this, and that's, of course, like in the case of here, we're looking for something that has electric, that has singular, and we want it to be a general round. So we want it because Thunder Cage is general rounds, right? So then we can simply go to the map and we can say difficulty rewards, and now we can just pick it out. So we say general rounds, it is an electric one, and it is singular. Now you can see this is a shitty week because we can't farm one this week, but there was last week, we had this shit available. So this is something that you can quickly do. Of course, this works for every fucking character, so you can sort that out quickly, but this is basically what you want to be doing to sort this out. Okay, and then last but not least, the external components, right? So generally speaking, Supernova is considered the bunny set because of that fourth set ability there, which gives you this electrocution strike out of the sky. It's basically the executioner, that boss in the void boss. It's the same skill that they have, so you have a chance of this electricity being called out of the sky and then hitting something when you electrocute something, but the damage ain't that great, and so again, like I said, I didn't want to worry too much about stacking too much survivability in my Descendant mods. So I wanted to get a lot of those stats from my external components. So what I've found to work really well is 2 pieces of Supernova and 2 pieces of Annihilation. Okay? And that's because Annihilation's first 2 pieces give you defense, which is good. I mean, I'd prefer HP, but I'll definitely take defense. And Supernova's first 2 pieces, they give you shield. And we don't want that. Shield is poopies. So this is a phenomenal roll for me. This has got defense, fire resistance, and max HP on, which is good. And then of course the 2-piece bonus on Annihilation is a slight amount of skill duration, which is okay. I'm not going to say no to that. The second piece over here gives me defense, gives me a little bit of additional XP. This is not a phenomenally rolled one, like I could maybe get something else in there, but this also gives me chill resistance. So now I already have 2 pieces with really good resistances on them and some really good, you know, defensive stats. And then my 2 pieces of Supernova have electrical and defense, and the set bonus, of course, here being more electrical skill power. And then I have defense and max shield on my my fourth piece, which is my second piece of Supernova. This could be better for sure. This could have like HP on it. I'd take HP over shield any day, but this still is no bullshit though, because it's like almost 5k defense, so that's pretty sweet. And that's it for the build. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Please let me know in the comments down below things that you would do different, stuff that you'd like me to test out, everything like that. There's a couple of different things which I have tested out on this build, and it's liable to change things because there's still so many modules in the game that hasn't, you know, been tested in combination with other ones. I mean, personally by me, and I'm doing all of this shit by myself and basically making comparisons and everything, so it could change. But I've been running this consistently for a couple of days now, and I'm super happy with it. Whenever I'm going into an interception, or is it an infiltration? Sorry. Whenever I do, these terms are so nuts. Whenever I do an infiltration, aka those 20-minute missions, this is the shit that I use. And whenever I'm farming and just trying to get up like a shitload of weapon XP, like super fast, or just go out and get mats or something like that, this is the shit that I use. But have fun. Let me know how you would change this, what you would do, how you would set your bunny up. I think everybody's looking forward to Valby that's dropping in like Ultimate Valby that's dropping in like 2 days time. So am I. I think it's gonna be super cool. So absolutely look out for a build for that to come out once I have all the stuff farmed up and all that. But other than that, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Till next video, fucking cheers.